Hello, my name is Patrick O'Callaghan. I'm a senior teacher in Rathmore Grammar School in Belfast, where I head up professional learning. And one of the areas that we have looked at is digital learning and how we can use particularly OneNote and Microsoft Teams more recently to consolidate the learning that happens in the classroom and to extend that beyond the classroom, whether that's in study or at home, with the idea of focusing on developing independent learners who are able to progress in their own learning. My subject is religious education, where I teach the philosophy module at A level, and the philosophy module can be quite academic by nature, and every student progresses in a different way and a different pace. And for me, the ability to be able, through Class Notebook and through Microsoft Teams, to be able to present information, knowledge, and understanding in a differentiated way, in a way that supports each learner at their own stage in learning and really sharpens and pushes on their progress as independent learners, has been incredibly important. It's had a very big impact in the learning in my classroom. One of the areas that we focused on as a school has been on the role of feedback in learning and how the ability to be able to provide meaningful feedback and close that feedback loop pushes on the students' ability to be able to progress in their learning. And so the ability for me to be able to use Class Notebook and Teams, both for teaching and supporting that independent student learning and that loop of where they improve and are continuously improving in their learning, has been, again, very, very beneficial. And one of the biggest bonuses has been that Class Notebook was excellent on its own, but its integration through Teams has provided that kind of home hub or that one-stop shop for all the learning apps that Microsoft and others have provided. And so I've been able to embed much more multimedia into the learning resources, such as Sways, such as Microsoft Forms, and even getting pupils to collaborate much more closely together, creating wikis and so on. And really to put that learning at the fingertips of the pupils and allow the pupils to progress well beyond the classroom and the allotted learning and teaching time. So if you've never used OneNote before, you might be thinking, well, what is it? And essentially it is a blank slate. When you open up a class notebook, it is, apart from the kind of the template pages that fill it out, it is essentially a glorified digital whiteboard or flip chart or overhead projector. It works incredibly well when you're presenting onto an interactive whiteboard in the classroom. But again, the pupils are able to see everything that they can see in class at home or on their own personal devices as well. So there's that automatic kind of join up between the learning in the classroom and the extent of that learning beyond the classroom. And they're able to follow along both what's happening at class, to be able to revisit that when they go home, to be able to take that down to study and to continue on where they left off in the lesson, and to constantly revisit the work and the learning that has taken place. Essentially, it brings very traditional notes to life a little bit more. It adds that kind of dynamism. And I find it very useful for being able to work collaboratively, whether to plan with the class or whether to be able to keep all their learning together in one place. So one feature that I would use quite a lot is the ability of the pupil section within OneNote to assign out work to them, to assign learning tasks to them, where the students are able to complete that task and send it back for me to be able to peruse and review, to offer feedback on, and then to send it back to them. It has sped up my marking process quite considerably, and I'll show you how that fits in with Teams. So you can see that the versatility of this, the ability to be able to give your instructions within an assignment, to be able to create quite a number of learning activities for the students to take part in, the ability for students to be able to see all the activities and learning that takes place during the classroom, and they're able to follow along both with their ordinary learning booklet. It has, of course, been a great value to us in the classroom during remote learning, where we've been able to assign different remote learning activities. We're able to integrate short videos that set up that work, that motivate the pupils, that G them up to be able to take part in that. And the pupils are able to do their work offline. It's not about digitizing everything and throwing everything online. The pupils are able to write their answers in their booklet and simply take a quick image and upload it. And then without having to collect all the booklets back in, we're able to see the work that they've been doing and be able to offer feedback on that. And it's a great way of just getting across the classes to be able to see that everybody's able to complete tasks well. So Teams has really then integrated and brought full circle this class notebook and the assignment of tasks, and the ability to be able to create the template page and then to assign it or to distribute it out to the students into their individual personal section of their OneNote, and they get their own copy that they can edit and they can return to you. And again, Teams gives a great way for the pupils to be able to access everything in one spot. So within their Teams, they have the class notebook tab, and they are similarly able to visit all the tabs and the compartments within the OneNote class notebook, including their own personal space. So they're never going to lose their booklet. They're never going to be able to not access their learning if they're staying at another house. Or they're, going to the library to study after school and they don't have their booklets with them. They're always able to access that learning and to be able to work their way through the material that's already been taught to them. And the beauty of using Teams and OneNote together is how seamless the two are. You can open up one in Teams and then simply click on the open in the desktop app, and then you have the full-blown Microsoft OneNote that I would use much more in the classroom to be able to get the full OneNote experience when I'm teaching in the classroom. There's a great way of being able to zoom into your notes, to be able to revisit your notes, and to be able to teach in the class. Another great feature in Microsoft Teams is the assignment feature. And as I said, when we started this off, really about 2015, and slowly piloting the use of Class Notebook, we were able to send out the pages and distribute the pages to each of the students. But Teams has offered that utility to be able to set a deadline, to be able to add in a rubric, the ability to be able to put a kind of very formal structure around the work as well. So it really has taken all the best bits of what Class Notebook offered in terms of distributing pupils' work and then the pupils uploading their work onto it. But now it's much more formal process of being able to hand out the work and return it back in, to be able to collate the grades and the statistics and the analytics and the insights that go with pupils when they've viewed the work, when they've turned in the work, whether it's been late and so on. All of this feedback that's very useful for the teacher comes through its integration into Microsoft Teams. So you can see I have distributed a very simple essay, basic essay students would do at the start of the year. I've created this template in OneNote, and I've created a self-assessment mark scheme that the students are able to use before they submit their essay. And they can simply type their essay onto OneNote directly, or they can do it in Microsoft Word and simply print it to OneNote. And then I'm able to digitally ink their work. I'm also able, because I've integrated this with Teams assignments, to be able to use all the feedback features, such as the rubric and such as the feedback text box as well. And so very quickly, I'm able to go through all my pupils in the class. It does, from a teacher point of view, cut down the working and the amount of hours spent giving feedback and marking work. And one of the things that has really sped that up and really kind of, instead of people zooming down to see the final mark or see the final grade and bypassing all the comments you've given them, the ability to be able to offer an audio or verbal feedback in Teams and in OneNote is very, very useful. And I find that very useful for giving pupils very tailored and specific work. And I suppose the proof is in the pudding. What you do get is pupils, the standard of pupils' work increases much more quickly than it would have in the past. I find that the students are much more organized, that you're able to share the learning outcomes of an activity quite clearly with the students, and they know exactly what they have to do to complete that piece of work well. And so I found even in very simple activities, such as asking students to create revision notes for a topic, that the standard and level the students produce is much higher now that we're integrating that whole assignment process through Teams and through OneNote. Again, for me, one of the big bonuses of Class Notebook and through Teams is the ability to build up a portfolio of the pupil work. The ability that even work that they do in class by hand, whether as a timed essay or an assessment or a piece of work, that they're able to keep that all compiled together in this digital space. And so if I want to check up on a pupil, or if I've got a cause for concern or a pastoral head of year wants to ask how a pupil's doing, I'm not merely relying on the kind of the quantitative data that goes along with my mark book. I'm actually able to dip in, and I'm actually able to go back and see, what students were doing well. I'm able to have these discussions with the pupils in real life about where they're at, what's working really well for them, and what they're progressing in. And I find that both from a pastoral point of view of knowing the pupils in your class and knowing how to support them, as well as being able to go beyond just the kind of the scores in the mark book to something much more qualitative that gives me a much greater insight in how to push the students on and encourage their progress throughout their learning. Another thing that I really enjoy and I find has a very deep impact has been the ability to create remote learning activities for the students at home. So yes, online live teaching is great, but I think in the blended sense that pupils get a lot out of well-structured deep learning activities that kind of that they're able to work asynchronously on at home, and that hopefully they find the activities kind of both challenging but something that they can do quite independently at home, and they get used to kind of a routine of how to do those and push them on. And then, as I said at the start, I suppose there have always been lots of different add-ons and tag-ons to digital learning. There are lots of apps. And for me, sometimes too many is too many. It can be quite difficult for students to kind of jump from one app to the next or from one medium to the other and to remember. And even something, a simple activity that you would give a student in a class, such as tonight, I want you to go home and watch this YouTube video. And actually, the chances of the whole class doing that are quite slim when they have to go and remember the web address, search for it, get on it, make sure they're watching the same video. Whereas within the one-stop kind of home hub of Microsoft Teams, you're able to provide all those apps in one central place. You're able to provide reminders, and essentially you're putting every learning activity at their fingertips, which means that the student can concentrate on their number one priority, which is their ability to learn. And so for me, I've been using the channels feature within Microsoft Teams to both students have their own private individual channels, but also for each topic or each module within the course to have its own individual tab. And across the top, then I'm able to embed and tag on specific learning activities. And for me, I could see some value in Microsoft Sway, but I found it a little bit bitty. I found it kind of a challenge to put pupils onto, and I just didn't kind of always think that it was worth the effort in terms of the amount of pupils who are going on to watch it. And what Teams has done is provided and said that home hub where the learning resources can stay and be easily accessed. And so it adds that, again, that enriched vitality of a resource that has enough vibrancy within it that allows the students to be able to, again, just consolidate what they've done in class. What we've done in very traditional teaching in class, they're able to get that very tailored support and breaking down the course into small, bite-sized, accessible pieces that allow them to be able to progress in their learning. And I do believe it's that kind of building up of the scaffolding and that ability to build up dignified and differentiated resources that the students get great value out of. So I could go on and I could show a whole range of ways in which I've used Class Notebook and Teams together. I could start to show ideas of how Kahoot is used and so on. But essentially, the biggest bit of advice that I can give to anyone is to get onto Twitter, to follow the Microsoft Innovative Educator Expert tag, MIEE, and to follow some of the people as part of that, both national and international community of like-minded educators who are supporting each other in the building up of digital learning and the building up of expertise, and essentially also to bring in a couple of people who are lead up that community, including one who's called Mike Tholson. You can find him on my Twitter. I retweet his videos quite often, but he's an exceptional he has an exceptional ability to be able to break down all the components of Microsoft Office, of Teams, of OneNote, and so many other bits in a very user-friendly, teacher-friendly way that has a high impact. And he's got those videos down to about a minute or 2 minutes, and every single video, and even though I use this stuff quite regularly, every single video pushes forward the ability to be able to use these tools well and effectively and to have a deep impact in the classroom. So I'm looking forward to some questions. And again, I would encourage you to find me on Twitter so we can strike up a conversation there. And once again, I thank you for the invitation to be able to speak to you today. Thanks very much.